Just like a diamond, today's quilt is a real gem. Diamond Daze is a free pattern available only at Fat Quarter Shop, and when you make it, you're gonna love it and you're gonna learn how it makes such a classic quilt. So let's get into it. Diamond Daze is a half-yard friendly pattern, and we wrote the pattern for 8 half yards, and we're using blues from the Time and Again collection by Lindsay McCrae for Moda, but you can use any fabrics you want. You could do a mix of 8 different colors, you could mix and match from your stash, but all you need is 8 half yards, a binding, and a backing. And then the most important thing you're gonna need is a ruler that has the 60-degree line marker on it. And I'm using the Creative Grid's 6.5 by 12.5 inch ruler, or you could use the 6.5 by 24.5 inch ruler. You just need something with a 60-degree line marking. So before you start this pattern, you want to familiarize yourself with your ruler, and all of the rulers are slightly different. But this is going to be your 45-degree line right here, and you can tell because the 45 is right on there. This is also a 45-degree line. But today we're only going to be using the 60-degree line, which is right here. So we're only going to be looking at this angle, and that is going to be used to cut out all of the pieces we're subcutting for our quilt. Your first step is to take your half yards and from each of them cut 2 strips that are 6.5 by width of fabric. That's going to give you a total of 16 strips. From here, you're going to take your 60-degree line, align it on the bottom, and you want to go as far over to the left as you can. So I'm going to go right there. I think that's plenty. So you've got your 60-degree line, and you know that you're going to cut this off and not use it. You're going to discard this and not use it, so you could leave it in your scrap pile. Then you're going to rotate your ruler because you want the 60-degree line to go right on the top here. And luckily, I'm using a 6.5 inch ruler, so I don't have to measure across because the ruler's already 6.5. So I'm making sure this is straight and this is straight. And from each of your strips, you're going to cut 4 diamond units. And I'm going to show you how I cut all of them. And as I'm cutting, I'm just making sure that the 60-degree line at the top and this is still straight. If it's not straight, what you could do is true up your fabric again just to get it straight, because these angles are really important for this quilt to go together really nice and smoothly. So let's just pretend right here that it's not even. What I would do is I would flip this back over and I would want to re-straighten it just to get a clean cut. Discard this. Flip your ruler back over. Now all rulers are going to be different, so your ruler might not be exactly like mine. And cut. Now we're going to save this for a future step, and you're going to have 4 of these from each strip, which is going to give you 64 total diamond units. Now when I cut this little piece to realign, I probably should have cut something smaller, so ignore that, and just if you're going to do that, do something much smaller. Now we're going to make a triangle unit from the remaining piece. You're going to take your ruler and we're going to draw a line 1/4 inch away from this angle right here. I'm using a friction pin because it will disappear with heat later. Then we're going to draw a second line on the bottom edge all the way across. Then we're going to take the 60-degree line ruler and place that on the left edge, draw a line. So right here you have 3 lines, 1, 2, 3. Now you want to cut 1/4 inch away from that last drawn line. And you're going to get 1 triangle unit from each strip, so you'll have 16 of these triangle units. So in summary, you're going to have 16 triangle units and 64 diamond units. Okay, so page 4 of your pattern is super important because at the bottom left and the bottom right, it tells you how to align your triangle units and your diamond units, which is the hardest part of this quilt. And since it is right here, it's gonna make it super easy for you. So if you're taking a diamond unit and a triangle unit, you're gonna follow this. And this tells you to line up exactly your points. So your corner and your top, you're lining up exact. You're gonna sew 1/4 inch away. You're not gonna overlay anything 1/4 inch. But when you're putting together 2 diamond units, that's different. That's where you need to offset 1/4 inch. So you're not gonna sew like this because it won't come out right. you're gonna sew a 1/4 inch. And what I like to do is you can just mark right here, a 1/4 inch away, right here, put your fabric right here, definitely pin, and then sew. And when you pull that together, you will see how it lines up. So now I'm gonna show you how it looks once they're sewn together. Now, I think it's easier to press this quilt open because there are so many seams, but that's totally optional. If you want to press open, that's great. If you don't, you can press each row opposite directions to make it easy for you. Now, let me show you how the second row looks one more time. So remember, when you are putting together your triangle and your diamond, point to point. But when you're doing your diamond to diamond, offset by 1/4 inch seam, and when you get that pressed open, it's gonna look like this. And from here, you're gonna have these little dog ears. And I would recommend just cutting them with the rotary cutter or snipping them off with your scissors before you start putting rows together. Okay, so we have row 1 done and row 2 done. And it's gonna look funny because this has 4 pieces and this has 2 pieces. You just have to really follow this diagram, and we really tested this pattern to make sure it works great. So it might look funny, but trust me, it works. From here, what I like to do is I'm gonna line up the points. So I'm gonna draw a 1/4 inch line at every intersection. It's just gonna make it easier. And with this quilt, the biggest recommendation I have is just do 1 or 2 rows at a time, get a rhythm, and then go from there. So from here, I'm gonna put these 2 seams together. I'm gonna poke a pin. So I'm gonna put a pin in this 1/4 inch seam right here and in this 1/4 inch seam. I'm gonna line those up, pin. Again, your triangles match exactly. And this looks funny, but you just have to trust the process. Sew with a 1/4 inch seam, press open, and then you're just gonna continue. But like I said, do 1 or 2 rows before you do the entire quilt. So for this quilt, another recommendation I would have is if you don't want fabrics touching, like right here, you could use a design wall to lay out your fabrics. Okay, so now we're gonna pretend that the entire quilt is done and we're gonna talk about trimming. At your top and your bottom, remember you have these little dog ears. All you wanna do is just cut those off. So the top and the bottom should just be a 1/4 inch away from this tip if you lined it up correctly. Then what you need to do is you need to chop off this, and you're gonna have a little bit of waste that you can put into your scrap. So basically I'm gonna turn it around because this is what we're gonna be doing. And you wanna place your ruler a 1/4 inch away from this intersection right here and right here. So from here, what I would do is I would draw a line down the entire quilt before I cut anything, just to be sure. And you would want that line, again, to be a 1/4 inch away from right here and a 1/4 inch away from right here. And then you're gonna chop that off according to this. And like I said, draw a line before you cut the entire thing. And if you do that, you have this a 1/4 inch away, and all of these intersections will also be a 1/4 inch away. Now this quilt, my other tip would be to pin, pin, pin. You have lots of bias edges, but this quilt, once you do a couple of rows, you'll really get into a rhythm and it will be much easier than it looks. So this quilt is all finished, and I just wanna point out that this is a 1/4 inch away, and if it's your first time doing triangles and diamonds, this might not show up exactly a 1/4 inch away, and I don't think anybody is going to notice. Now, the pantograph we use this time is called Marmalade. It's swirly. Because there are so many straight edges, I wanted something swirly to give the quilt movement, and we used a light blue thread to match the fabrics. I really don't like the thread to show up, so anything I can do to find a thread that's gonna blend in is really nice, and the blue that we picked really works great on the dark, the medium, and the lights. So you can always take your thread and audition it before you use it to see how it will look on your fabrics. So when we started this pattern, you probably thought, oh my gosh, this is so hard, because that's what I thought when I first saw it. But if you follow my simple tips and this great free pattern, I know you're gonna have great success. And if you're wanting to move from beginner to intermediate, this is a great quilt to try. Make sure you subscribe, like, and comment, and I'll see you next time.